Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Good Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined today by Denny Carter, John Daigle, Kyle Dvorchak, as we're going to dive into a hectic first week of training camp. We're talking Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Michael Thomas, and so much more. But first, as you may have heard if you're tuned in to an NBC property, this week is the Olympics. I've had them on 24 hours a day, and I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a lot of pressure in the Olympics. You train like your whole life. You know, you try to like peak your training. You know, it's like being like a kicker, a soccer penalty kick taker, and like a closer, kind of all mixed into one. The amount of pressure. And I was wondering, we'll start with Denny because he usually has the best answer for everything. What is the most pressure-packed moment from your personal sports life? Whether this is grade school, high school, the rec league in college, what is the most pressure-packed sports moment of your life?
Oh my God! All right. So I'm gonna go with two. They're both golf, and one is a complete disaster. One is a triumph beyond description. All right, so I'll start with the bad. The bad is this: bachelor party, 2009.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I go take all my groomsmen, friends, buddies, everybody. We go out to my favorite golf course, to basically the only golf course I played as a young man,
as a youth.
Yes, and I'm psyched. I'm psyched to show them what I can do. You know, because these guys don't really play golf except for one of them. You know, and so they were nice enough to come out. They've heard that I play golf all the time. I'm psyched to show them. You know,
you're the guy. You're the guy.
Yeah, I'm the guy. I'm the golfer.
You're the guy who plays golf.
I'm the golfer. At that point, I had one shot at 69. And this is not a joke. I'm not playing around. I did it once. So I tee it up on the first tee, a first tee that I had, played off of 500 times. And I had never hit a worse shot than I did that day off the first tee. I topped it. I topped my tee shot, and it trickled off the tee box. And I didn't want to leave the course, but I came close to doing so after all the heckling that lasted, throughout the entire front nine, really. I did okay after that, but the pressure, once I got over that ball, I could barely hold the club still. I could barely function as a human being. The pressure was so great because I had done it to myself. I had built it up myself. Anyway, that was the most pressure-packed moment. And then there was another one where in a junior championship round, I sunk a 30-footer for the win to give my team the win. And that was the greatest pressure-packed moment of my life. But I still remember the bachelor party one more, obviously.
See, Denny, I thought you were going to say being at Cape Cod and having Peter Overzet throw you a Frisbee from 100 yards uphill, and you went into the ocean, still somehow managed to drop it.
I didn't even have the chance to drop it. I misjudged it so badly. I misjudged it like a Pirates outfielder.
Pitiful.
Sports fans, are you ready? Download the PointsBet app now and use code NBCPOD100 to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. When you bet with PointsBet, the official sports betting partner of NBC Sports, you get faster bets, faster withdrawals, and faster rewards at your fingertips. Download the PointsBet app now to experience this premium sports book for yourself. So, are you ready? T&Cs apply. Void where prohibited. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services.
Danny, you regaled us with a bachelor party tale that is high stakes, but like Daigle, you actually played sports, didn't you? Assuming you had some moments, what comes to mind for you?
I'll make it quick. I guess showing up, I played in the Texas 06 high school all-star game, and I showed up, and I was the only goalie on the roster. And mind you, I'm like short. I rely on explosion as a goalie. Usually they're tall, have abs, and are lanky. I used to run a 4.4, so like it was just straight line speed and explosiveness. That's it. But we still won 4-1, by the way. No, very quickly. I think the most pressure, it's somewhat sports, I guess, but I also did theater. That's a long-running joke on this podcast that everyone is aware of, that I talked about a lot last year. And knowing that there's talent scouts out in the audience as you perform as Kaneki is something on another level, and have to juggle like garbage bin cans and tire rims while dancing to Grease Lightning.
gosh.
Yeah, that's a pressure that you should not have to know, by the way.
We need to bring back theater references. That is a good point. I mean, Kyle's a Zoomer. I'm assuming he didn't play organized sports growing up. But,
I played like I was like our elementary team or whatever would throw 5 passes a year. So like that's our wide receiver. That is the guy that plays wide receiver, because we would literally throw maybe like less than 10 passes in a year playing 8 teams. So like, no, I was always terrible. Imagine Daigle without the athleticism, but also without the theater prowess. None of it. Just I'm Daigle's size.
Not a good
but
half.
none of the talent. Neither side of it. Neither the creative nor the 4-4 is fast. Jeez, Daigle.
Really, man.
Yeah, the closest I've ever come was like we had back-to-back rec league games in college. Like just a bunch of guys who like played high school soccer are not like very athletic. We had a few good kids who could have played like really low division college soccer, but we're like, that's not fun. So we go and just play rec league, lose our soccer game. Then we have a rec league basketball game scheduled right after that, like back to back. We really cared. It was like a playoff soccer game. We lost. A dude hit a bicycle kick right in my face. So just like he sauced me so bad. So everyone's exhausted, and half of our team half of our team just drops out. Like half our team's like, we're not playing the basketball game. Like they're exhausted. And I was like, this is my time. I will be our team's hero. Like whatever year the Cavs were terrible with LeBron, I was like, I'm going to be that person. And I go out and immediately hit a 3. And I'm like, am I a god? And I scored 2 points the rest of the game. I almost threw up. Like I felt so horrible. But for a brief shining moment, I was like, I am Jesus.
It was a 4.45 for all the baseball boomers, Pat. 4 inside the park home runs, by the way. Only 1 outside the park. So
inside the park. I wanted to share a story about softball, but it's too long. And I'll just say, John, in high school, I was a member of the improv troupe until I got such crippling stage fright that I stopped going to the shows. And I loved the practices. I'd have people rolling in the practices, guys. And I got too much stage fright. But I have some softball stories that I'll save for another day. It involved, a 20-run inning where we batted around twice and I was the hero. But anyways, that's an explosive offense.
No big deal.
No big deal. An explosive offense, folks, is the Dallas Cowboys. They're one of this year's all systems go offenses in fantasy football, except that they're not all systems go already. They're already having issues with a pretty important fella named Dak Prescott, who had arm soreness, just soreness, but to the point where it necessitated an MRI. The MRI revealed a mild shoulder strain, but he's day to day. At worst, he's week to week. It doesn't seem like something that has any shot at like affecting his week 1 availability. You don't see any guy come back from catastrophic injury, missing time, we'll say, but no indication it'll affect Dak Prescott's week 1 availability. But guys, I mean, what is the fallout from this? Does this get Cowboys ADPs more reasonable? Is like maybe CeeDee Lamb's ADP come down a spot or 2? What do we think the fallout is from this? We'll start with our resident Cowboys fan, John Daigle.
I hate being labeled as such. And 2, it's to your point, actually, because as of Thursday, July 29th, not concerned at all. There's still a full month and 10 days until the Cowboys and Bucks kick off on the opening night game on Thursday night. But if this injury were to linger to his throwing shoulder, mind you, say another 2 or 3 weeks, then of course we have to start worrying that the offense just craters around him, because that's what would happen. Garrett Gilbert, their backup, performed admirably last year in his lone start against the Steelers, but was still league average. And before then, remember, played for the inaugural and only, mind you, AAF champions, the Orlando Apollos under Steve Spurrier in 2018. Threw just 3 pass attempts for the Browns as Baker Mayfield's backup in 2019. And then last year for the Cowboys, they only got to that spot in starting him because he couldn't beat out Ben DiNucci as the team's third stringer in camp. So it's like not a situation you want to be in. It's actually amazing that they again didn't prioritize backup quarterback after what happened just last year. Because remember, Andy Dalton should not have even been on the team. He only signed there, not that they were prioritizing the position, because he was living 2 hours north. Thus, he drove for a tryout, and they said, oh yeah, screw it, bring this guy in, we need the help. If he was in any other state, they wouldn't have cared whatsoever to sign him. So Dak is the reason, in my opinion, that Zeke has league-winning upside, since opponents have to respect the passing game. Dak is the reason Amari has averaged 18 fantasy points since joining the team. Like, all of these players just crater to significantly lower ADPs. As talented as I think CeeDee Lamb is, that's why I'm interested to hear Denny and Kyle's opinion. Like, he's not a player that's going to survive with Gilbert under center. And so that's why we need to start worrying down the road if this continues.
It's going to continue. I mean, I know that Mike McCarthy said no big deal.
No big deal.
Today.
No big
He
deal,
said,
folks.
well, what's the big deal? Our guy who had a catastrophic injury last year came back, threw for a little while, and got an MRI.
We give our quarterbacks MRIs every day around here. I don't know how you do it over there with the Falcons, but
right. It's not. It puts a pit in your stomach. Honestly, it's something that's going to drag on. We're not going to see Dak Prescott in full gear this summer after missing all that time last year. It's concerning, and I'm more concerned, honestly, that I think than Daigle here, because I anticipate it lasting, probably throughout the rest of the summer. There's also Amari Cooper's foot,
Look, totally normal to not have a timeline for a return. I mean,
right. And yeah, I mean, Jerry Jones said maybe mid-August for Amari Cooper. What? Maybe. I mean, I understand that the season doesn't start until early September, but maybe mid-August might be late August. It's the Cowboys offense, all the stacking we've been doing of the Cowboys offense and best ball is not looking the best right now.
I feel like at some point the Cowboys are going to start doing their injuries like hockey does. We're like, Prescott's got something in the lower half of his body. There's something going on. We don't know when he's coming back. We don't know where he is, but he's fine. I'm sure he's fine. I fall more on the Daigle side where I think the upside is just so high on this offense that I'm willing to eat a little bit of downside risk. I don't think this added much because almost immediately all the beats were like, yeah, I mean, it's probably nothing. It's just purely precautionary was the exact wording they used that the Cowboys released. I tend to agree with them, but that also might just be my fantasy wanting because my CeeDee Lamb shares are yeah, everything's going to be all right, buddy. I do think I'm willing to eat. I was so high on the Cowboys that I'm willing to eat a little more downside risk. Even if I were to price them down 2-3%, I would still be getting them anyway. So am I slightly concerned that now there is this very, very black swan tail risk that everything goes to hell, which it would without Dak Prescott? Doesn't feel great, but it's still not enough to scare me off of them.
Go ahead, the reason it's concerning, sorry, John, is it's not because of his shoulder. I mean, it seems to be a truly mild strain, but the fact that he's coming back, he's got to regain his confidence with his leg, and now this is multiple weeks maybe where he's not going to be getting the live reps with his leg, getting comfortable again with his leg, trusting that that's always the final boss coming back from these injuries, just trusting your body part again, and now he's going to lose some of that. He's going to lose. The guy, we have to remember, doesn't even really have that many reps with CeeDee Lamb. Played 5 games with CeeDee Lamb. Barely practiced it all together last offseason because of the COVID offseason. And so we're not worried about the shoulder. But I just feel setting the whole Dak regaining his confidence, regaining his timing back, it sets that project back a week or two. And that's the only concerning aspect to me. I mean, I have no doubt he'll be out there week 1. But I just feel he could be now even more out of sync in week 1 than he might have been to begin with coming back from such a serious injury.
It is August. It is officially fantasy football season now. And we forget, especially coming out of best ball season, we're talking about exposures and portfolios and whatnot, that most recreational players have their one league that they're playing for pride for. So if you happen to have your draft in the next 2 weeks, I would say just bite the ADPs, take the chance on any dips in the Cowboys offense and go with that and maybe suffer the consequences later. Because right now, I don't think there's anything to worry about. Once we get into later rounds, like I said, or later weeks, later in the summer, that's when we start adjusting truly.
I was gonna make I know we've got some crypto listeners in the crowd, and I was just thinking of CeeDee Lamb. A lot of the crypto. I'm not passing judgment here, by the way. A lot of the crypto true believers, everything is just buy more Bitcoin now, buy it now. I got a little bit of that vibe at the CeeDee Lamb just now from you guys. There's never a problem. Just always buy more, get more CeeDee Lamb shares. And
yeah, just 2 months ago, they were selling Bitcoin 2 for 1. I think was the deal they would give you on that. Yeah. No, as a I don't know if I'd call myself crypto believer. I can definitely feel the things are going bad, and you still just are having people say nah, you just got to buy the dip. And yeah, I think if we get a few more weeks, if we get 3 more weeks of no Dak Prescott, I would really start to panic because I agree. I don't think, especially for me, I think, yeah, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are so talented, but the fact that neither of them are going to have this monstrous 30% target share means that if they are eating from such a terrible pie, which will be any of their backup quarterbacks, no, they won't have enough target share to overcome how bad their offense will be. We saw how bad it would be, like Daigle said. And you have to be just the absolute god of air yards and targets if you want to overcome an offense as bad as we saw. And they won't have that, even if they're both very talented.
I'd say give Dak Prescott 10 days. If it's longer than 10 days, maybe start to worry a little bit.
That's a good
Anything
number.
shorter than 10 days, do not worry. Aaron Rodgers is back. He is airing his dirty laundry. He's demanding slot receivers be delivered to the Bay of Green Bay via private jets. He's having quite a week. And first off, I'm going to ask you, Denny. I'm going to ask you to set the Aaron Rodgers scene. Set the Randall Cobb scene. We were promised a Randall Cobb dialogue heading into the show. Does Randall Cobb's arrival, does that kill any Amari Rodgers? Rookie sleeper odds? Is Allen Lazard canceled? Lay it out for us, Denny.
We'll have to look into whether Lazard has been canceled. I haven't read his the transcript from his recent press conference, but Randall Cobb is someone, the Zoomers don't know. And Kyle was literally in grade school when Randall Cobb was fancy.
Kyle, do you know where Randall Cobb went to college?
He was Kentucky Wildcat kind of guy, right?
Kyle's too smart. Moving on.
Yeah. Come on. What are you doing? You're disproving my point. Like, live.
Well, I only know him from my Lynn Bowden studies. They were like the same kind of guy, right?
Oh my God.
Not quite. But anyways, Denny, Randall Cobb.
Yeah. So I feel like when a quarterback of great significance requests a certain player to come play with him, we should pay attention. Believe that with Tom Brady. I believe that with Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm not going off the rails. I'm not saying we're drafting the Randall Cobb of 2015 or something, but we are talking about a guy who has had seasons in Green Bay of 127 targets, 129 targets in 83 games with Aaron Rodgers, starting in 2012 when Randall Cobb became a full-time player. Basically, Cobb averaged 7.4 targets per game and 14.5 PPR points. Now, he's 31 years old. He has a lot of injuries under his belt over the past 3 or 4 seasons. I understand all that. But I'm very interested in him later, where's he going to go? Like the 12th, 13th round, something like that? I mean, no one's going to prioritize him, I don't think. And I do believe he is the primary slot guy right now until further notice, whether we like it or not. And we probably don't like it, but you just have to kind of deal with it.
For betting, you can ignore the juice and the time spent because there was this 5 to 10 minute window pre the Rodgers news where you could jump on Packers over 9 wins and divisional title plus money. All that's out the window now. But for fantasy and for Randall Cobb, who only turns 31 at the end of this month, by the way, he's actually still fairly young. The contract and everything that people discuss just really don't matter given what Denny talked about, that Rodgers made his demands and Cobb is back. For best ball, I consider him a poor man's Jarvis Landry, as someone whose production won't ever hurt you. It's never going to hurt at a value to have Randall Cobb on your roster weekly. And in redraft, as a high floor player you could start in a pinch, I have him personally jammed at the wide receiver 55 spot as a weekly wide receiver 5 around Michael Pittman, Traquan Smith, nitpick if you will, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think he's going to deliver that type of value. And recall that nothing he did with the Texans matters. We're actually only 1 year removed from him being an 800-yard receiver with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys offense. So given his age, given that he has produced fairly recently, I think he will be a value as a wide receiver 5 or 6.
Which matters a little bit last year, by the way, just because he was playing a very efficient, good offense. And it was he was injured again. He missed 5 or 6 games last year. So that's kind of why last year's the mulligan, but he was in a very efficient, well-moving offense last year and very disappointing statistically. And Kyle, I'm just going to keep going. And so I'm going to cut you off and just turn it into a 4-minute monologue. I was just say, I don't love the move for fantasy because Amari Rodgers, he was someone I thought was getting sold a little too short in fantasy circles. Someone I thought fell maybe not far in the draft, maybe a little farther than I thought. And I'm kind of sad that we're not going to see him kind of get thrown in the fire and maybe get to make an impact. But from a pure football perspective, this is a very, even if it's like quarterback ego move, I thought it was a very, very wise move by the Packers because they still just didn't have the bodies. And Devontae Adams and Allen Lazard both missed time last year, but it didn't really overlap that much. Neither absence was that long. Lazard's was 4 or 5. They had good injury luck last year with a very not deep group of receivers whatsoever. And Randall Cobb, might not improve your injury luck, but this is a group I thought they still badly needed to fill out. And just kind of a no-brainer to add someone for cheap who has a half decade of chemistry with your quarterback. And even if it doesn't provide huge fantasy returns, I thought it was actually, despite being a quarterback ego move, a very wise move by the Packers.
Yeah, they were definitely a team that like you can only get so many 2 for 20 games out of Alan Lazard when Aaron Rodgers is throwing to him before you need to make moves. And Amari Rodgers is one of those moves, but they definitely could have used more, even if they're paying him $5.25 million, I believe. It's a lot, but I mean, it's what Rodgers wants. And yeah, like Rodgers does not bring in Randall Cobb just to be, even if we think he's not talented, even if we think, at least at this point in his career, even if we think he should be the third receiver, it does not matter in the slightest. Rodgers, through 17 weeks, is going to ensure that he is like 80% slot guy. And that, at a minimum, if he only gets 400 yards because he's so old and decrepit, is like 9 touchdowns or something absurd. So yeah, I think I like where Daigle has him. I think I have him just behind that, which, nitpicking. He's gonna, and I saw him go like 150, 160 in a draft I was doing this morning. I don't think the correction is going to come hard enough. Like, I think he's just going to score a bunch of touchdowns because that's what Rodgers receivers do.
And I was, Pat, also drafting Amari Rodgers like a last round pick in best ball every single league. I have so much, but now like I kind of just don't think he matters anymore. Like Randall Cobb is here to take his spot.
Yeah, I mean, because even if like Randall Cobb gets injured, now like Amari's gonna be losing like important reps this summer. He's just not gonna be like he's not gonna be viewed like going into the season as
Right.
important of a part. So like it'll be kind of like ad hoc if he gets thrown into the offense post a Randall Cobb injury. So it is. There's no way to spin it positively if you're like someone who was all in on Amari Rodgers this summer. Joe Judge, folks, has said there is a quote unquote chance that Saquon Barkley is ready for Week 1. First, are we really buying that, or maybe they're just haunted? My thought is maybe they're haunted not by Saquon's ACL injury, but by his high ankle sprain from 2 years ago, where like they rushed him back. Like he wasn't, he was clearly just compromised almost the entire season. But I just have a hard time believing that's the case. I think he'll be 100% physically by Week 1. And if they really thought this, why did they only add Devontae Barker and Corey Clement is my thought. But we'll start with Kyle. I mean, are we believing this Saquon Barkley doomsaying from his own coaching staff?
I mean, I'm not saying he will not play Week 1, but like the more they talk about it, the more you have to bake in that downside risk. Like we went from, Dak Prescott 0 downside risk because he was back and practicing to now, there's small downside risk. It's the same way for Saquon Barkley, except his is much more real. It's not just this like purely precautionary. His is real. There is a very real chance he doesn't play Week 1. Is it like 80%? Probably not. I still would bet on him playing Week 1, but the fact that we are now putting numbers to this, the odds of it happening is so much more real. And then if he doesn't play Week 1, say he comes back, they ease him in Week 2, are you really saying like weeks 3 and 4 is where you're finally comfortable starting a top 10 pick in fantasy? So no, I think I have him at that 1-2 turn now. I'd be taking him there, but he firmly moved out of Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, even Ezekiel Elliott kind of territory into a guy that Jonathan Taylor probably not going to catch as many passes. Actually, 100%. Even if Barkley misses like 6 games start season, not catching as many passes. But the fact that I can rely on having Jonathan Taylor for the first 3 weeks for sure, barring anything else happening, that puts them on even standing for me. I'd take him slightly above, but I think you could argue he belongs in that kind of tier.
And there are other very smart people in the industry who believe the Giants have come together and agreed to say the same thing every time Barkley or someone on the staff is asked about his injury. But I read this news as this means there's a chance he is not ready for Week 1, which I don't think was in the cards prior to this, that he might be limited, but at least available throughout the first month of the year. It was always my read of the situation until this bit of information. In high stakes drafts, he has fallen to the first, second round turn. And honestly, like Denny's going to high five me here. Like, what if it's not with Jonathan Taylor? What if it's for a wide receiver instead? What if we just skip altogether and grab a Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hopkins for a higher floor than worrying about these running backs and offenses we're scared of, the Colts included anyhow? So I don't think he needs to be jumbled together so much with the Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, the list goes on and on, Aaron Jones as well. But maybe just grab a receiver at that spot instead, unless he falls to, let's say, middle of the second round, which the way this is going at this rate, I could see it happening. And maybe that's when I start taking him as like an RB1 type at that point of drafts. But in the first, second round turn, I think I'm still shying away.
When I hear a head coach say he may be ready for Week 1, what I hear is he definitely won't be ready for Week 1, and he probably won't be ready for Week 2, and he probably won't be ready. Like this is a huge admission. I feel like if he had a good chance of starting Week 1, the team would never even hint at him not starting Week 1. I do think that this is a serious issue, and I would not draft. I mean, take it from the source here, but I would not draft Barkley until. I mean, I'm going to say it, till the third round. That's where I would draft Barkley. That's where I feel comfortable right now.
I didn't feel nervous really until Denny actually did this get me kind of nervous. But like I was about to say, John made an interesting point. What if the Giants are just actually telling the truth about Saquon's health? I'm just assuming because the guy got hurt last September. He's like, 25? It would be very unusual, like highly unusual for him not to be ready for week 1. So I'm like, I'm just not going to believe. But then Denny's talking. I mean, it is true actually. Like most of the time, you get nothing but sunshine in these situations. So I'm so inclined to just not believe anything NFL coaching staff say. But he's right. Almost always in the situation, you get universal positivity. So maybe I actually should start considering the odds that he doesn't play week 1.
And I think that type of Golden Globe performance is giving Joe Judge far too much credit to think like he has the knowledge to hide this publicly.
Well,
like
that's a competitive
Belichickian
advantage guy. Hashtag competitive advantage guy.
That's a Belichickian skill. Like everyone else gets it wrong. Actually, Zach Taylor's actually pretty good at it as well, even though it's pretty easy to read through his lines. But like it takes a skilled coach to do that. And like I don't consider Judge that.
Hear the Olympics like you have never heard them before with The Podium, an NBC Olympics podcast. Follow along with host Lauren Shihadi as we bring you deep into the stories and behind the curtains each day during the Tokyo Olympics. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Also, non-scripted plug, golf at 5:30 in the afternoon in Tokyo morning, amazing. We should do that more often here in the States. I understand it's hard with the sun, but let's put some cars out there, aka Bagger Vance, and have some headlights going. I'm all in on this.
Daigle, I heard you're into a little handball action, but I was listening to one of the past few podcasts catching up, and that's something I got into watching in not the last Olympics, one before that. Do you have any favorite players?
Oh, I can't name a single player handball.
I can name one. I don't know if he still plays. I think it's Mikael Hansen, and he wears 24 because he is slightly better than Jordan, is what I assume he would tell you. He's, I believe, Danish.
So Kyle went with if you're into handball, name the top 3 players in the world.
Yeah, show us that you're into handball, John.
I do love Olympic golf on NBC. I have to say, John, I watched it till midnight last night. I fell asleep while watching it. I could do that every Thursday through Sunday.
I'm going to text you from now on because I was watching like JT fail to hit a single birdie. And I was like, I know Denny's getting upset as well.
Oh, I was tilting my face off as Justin Thomas hit every green and couldn't make a putt. He's the only one. He's the only one who didn't make a putt yesterday.
I will just say I will unabashedly promote any NBC Olympics products because I am just obsessed with the Olympics and I'm like every night getting into something like weirder and crazier. Last night it was 3-on-3 basketball, which I sadly believe is over now.
Introducing the biggest streamers of the summer.
Finally heading to the Olympic Games. Gressel to Tokyo.
The fastest.
And Manuel is going to do it. Oh!
The strongest.
World record by Ryan Krauser.
The greatest.
Nobody does it like Simone.
And they're about to give you the greatest show you've ever seen.
The dream has come true.
The Tokyo Olympics, tonight on NBC.
I'm Kareem Maddox, and I've been playing basketball since I was 4 years old. This year, I'm training for the Tokyo Olympics and wondering what it means to be an Olympian.
We didn't want to be used as some sort of political tool.
And what the Olympics mean to all of us.
If one of us can win a gold, then it will mean a lot to the people all over the world.
Because the Olympics have always been about more than just sports.
I do think that I achieved my greatness here.
Subscribe to The Greatness with Kareem Maddox. That's me. Produced by USG Audio and Transmitter Media.
Enough about like crazy Latvian people setting devastating picks in 3-on-3 basketball. We're back to football. And it's Michael Thomas, who it's starting to seem like in a best case scenario is going to miss 5 games. In a worst case scenario is going to be like the reserve pup and miss 6 games and not return till week 8 because the Saints have a week 6 bye. Yesterday, Sean Payton just like flatly saying, so like we had been speculating kind of about like, why did Michael Thomas wait to get his ankle surgery? But, we're not the team. We're not the player. He knows more about his body than anyone else. But then presumably Sean Payton knows a lot more than we know. And he said yesterday, he should have gotten the surgery earlier. Very, very strange situation with Michael Thomas. Deontay Harris is suspended now, by the way. We did have Greg Rosenthal on the show the other day pumping up Marquez Callaway. Where in the world, Denny, are we on this passing offense right now? Like, what should we be doing with Michael Thomas first and foremost?
So Nick Underhill, the great Saints beat writer, said, right away after the Thomas news broke, he said that, he had talked to sources who said that Thomas went to a specialist right after the season and said, do I need surgery? And the specialist said, no, you can rehab this without surgery. He thought that everything seemed to be going smoothly, but when he reported to the team in June, the team said, what? No, you need surgery. So I don't really understand why it took that long. Maybe I'm not understanding like the mechanics of teams communicating with players during the offseason. But anyway, that was the timeline that Underhill pieced together. As for the fantasy fallout, I wrote a really way too long piece on it on the BC Sports Edge. If you'd like to read way too much about the Saints passing game, I really think that the Saints are way more likely to go with Taysom Hill now, with Michael Thomas out for a month or more, because, I don't think Sean Payton is the kind of coach who's going to force a plan that won't work without Michael Thomas, without his best receiver. So I think we're going to see Taysom start. I think we're going to see lots of running, which means obviously good things for Kamara, that and the screen game. And then great things for possibly Latavius Murray, if the Saints can stay in games and create that sort of neutral and positive game script that Latavius Murray has relied on during his time in New Orleans. Without that, Latavius is really not going to get the opportunity that we need for him to be like an every week option. But besides that, I've written, glowingly of Traquan Smith. I don't know now if I'm in on Smith. Callaway, actually, Greg Rosenthal, number one Marquez Callaway truther on the planet. I don't disagree. After looking into it, I think that Traquan Smith is ripe to be usurped as the number one receiver. The problem is
counts with Traquan Smith. 9th time's the charm.
Right. By 2027, he will be something.
Well, the Deontay, sorry to cut you off, the Deontay Harris potential 2-game suspension from that DUI that happened earlier this month is actually significant, not only because he would be the slot receiver they're taking out of the offense, but he's the team's primary punt returner, and Marquez Callaway is the next guy up. So there's like no way they can get away from Callaway. They have to actually include him both on special teams and within the offense.
And Callaway in one game last year against the Panthers, where Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, we used to call him Manny Sanders. Why don't we do that anymore? Anyway, both of them were out. Callaway was the number one receiver, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 70 some yards. Traquan Smith was kind of an afterthought in that game. So if you feel compelled to take a flyer on a New Orleans receiver late in drafts, I think it's Callaway.
It's Tim Patrick once they fire.
Where do you have Thomas ranked for redraft? Where did you move him to? Because quickly, where I struggle with right now, like best ball, I got it down. It's easy. We don't have to worry about his injury, and you can hide him because we still think he's going to be out 6 games on PUP list and then return in week 8. I say week 8 because they have the week 6 bye. Week 8 would be at home against the Bucs. It just makes a lot of sense after week 7 Monday Night Football game. But for best ball, like I said, not wide receiver 9, 10 builds, you can hide him in there with other players. For redraft, there are a lot of guys every year people just stash, including myself, on the back end of their benches. And if you have too many of those guys, then your bench is just kind of useless too because you're getting no production from it. So I think it's harder to just say, draft him as a wide receiver 4 or 5 and just hide him for 7 weeks because at some point injuries might force you to drop him, and you don't want to be the guy doing that if you don't have an IR slot available either.
That's right. Yeah, I have him. I forget exactly where, but somewhere around wide receiver 45. I think that he's going to be out a long time. And, is he going to be right 100% right off the bat coming back? I feel like that's a little presumptuous.
Well, his injuries didn't linger at all last year.
Right. So
and again, if you have IR, it's a really easy decision. Probably do draft him as a wide receiver 4 or 5. If you do not, and you're just stashing him like a 4 to 6 man bench, I think it's a really complicated question because maybe he should be like the wide receiver 70. Maybe you're just not worrying about it.
I got to jump in and make a comment about managing fantasy leagues, by the way. We're not used to, if you play fantasy baseball, you have IL spots. This is part of the game. It hasn't really been part of the game in fantasy football, but the COVID rules changed the game last year. You have unlimited IR stints now. It can be as short as 3 weeks, 3 games. You need an IR spot or 2 in your fantasy leagues now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially like the COVID thing makes it so obvious. But yeah, I think that's something that like best ball has rotted our brain to say that like, oh, well, like he'll come back, he'll score you a bunch of points and that'll be good. But like no league actually plays with just the depth of best ball. You lose one more receiver and you're deciding which of your good bench players to cut because you're like, I can't cut Michael Thomas. But like, you have to cut somebody. So those roster spots have so much more valuable when there are only 12, 14, 16 of them. So yeah, I think I actually have Michael Thomas as like a solid wide receiver 4. I think I'm sort of pushing him that Denny tier where he's more on that 4 or 5 border just because of the like complete lack of utility it gives your roster.
And it's not just cutting him. Remember, we are projecting him, may not even be true, to return in week 8. It's against the Bucs. What if you have 3 or 4 better matchups for flex options? Then suddenly you're in another conundrum asking yourself, do I starter sit Michael Thomas in his first game back from injury in a tough matchup? So like maybe you just don't want the headache altogether.
I will say with Michael Thomas, by the way, it's not guaranteed he's going to start on the reserve pup list. He had weird injury return last year, but he's still like one of those guys like in the complete prime of his career. Like he could end up only missing like 2 or 3, 4 games. We just don't know yet.
Right.
And then the pup list, the problem with the pup list is when it becomes a possibility at all. And it's like very clearly a real possibility with Michael Thomas. Like that's the real problem with Michael Thomas, that it's even a possibility is majorly concerning. I was about to do a horrible transition here. I was going to say, what else is majorly concerning? The 49ers and the quarterback competition that apparently does not actually exist, according to Kyle Shanahan. He's saying there's not an open competition, that Jimmy Garoppolo is the starter. Trey Lance, they want just Jordan Love. We're not playing him for 3 years. Trey Lance, he didn't quite go that far. He said there's no quarterback competition. Is he taking this FCS thing seriously, John? Or is he trying to maybe do this thing where like he's going to create high hurdles for his rookie player, but hurdles that like aren't totally realistic? And like, if he clears these high hurdles, then he's the starter. Maybe that's what he's actually doing. What is Kyle Shanahan doing here with Trey Lance?
So obviously, the closer we get to the regular season, the more likely Garoppolo's $26 million hit is on the books for week 1. And although Trey Lance struggled at OTAs learning the playbook, it's an intricate Shanahan system. We know that. He's actually been doing well so far at camp, reportedly. The 49ers, this is what's key, open the year against the Lions, Eagles, Packers, Seahawks, and Cardinals before going into their week 6 bye. I have no idea what their record is after that. I have no idea what the plan is, like a la Tua perhaps, where no matter how the team is doing, they're going to bench Garoppolo anyways and transition Lance over the bye week. And at best ball, it's possible to at least hide Lance with an elite quarterback, Lamar Jackson, let's say, because Lamar has a week 14 bye much later in the season. Thus, you're not worrying whether San Francisco makes that transition by week 7. But in redraft, I think it's opposite. You take advantage of having Lance and being able to drop players and waiting for quarterbacks like we always do with redraft technically anyhow, and grabbing a later guy with him and behind him. Someone like Kirk Cousins, for instance, comes to mind because the Vikings quietly opened the year against the Bengals, Cardinals, Seahawks, Browns, Lions, and Panthers. You're not really worried about any of those teams. Same for Sam Darnold. For whatever you think about Sam Darnold, you can get him in the last round if you draft Lance later in redraft, and he opens the year against the Jets, Saints, Texans, Cowboys, Eagles, and Vikings. It's 2 terrific situations to add to Lance, and that's how I'll be approaching in a redraft no matter what happens with Garoppolo.
Yeah, that was literally my exact approach. Pat, we did the for the draft guide, which you can check out. We did the
salary cap draft.
We did the salary cap draft, and that was my exact strategy. Was I got Trey Lance for super cheap, and I was like, I just need someone to just paste over this hole in my wall for 6 weeks or 7 weeks. And I think it was like Tua I got for very cheap. It was like $1 because that's all you need is just a few mediocre weeks until Trey Lance comes in and lights the league on fire. And worst case scenario, Trey Lance never plays, and you just do what you do with quarterbacks anyways. You stream them. Like if Tua didn't turn out for my team, I would just start working the waiver wire, which is something we've done for years anyways. But you get for a pretty reasonable price this upside of a like Lamar Jackson level runner.
I think in somewhat casual leagues, I think you're going to see Lance drop really far if the Shanahan comments keep up through the summer. Jimmy's our guy. We're going with him. Week 1 starter, this and that. I do think he will be an afterthought in a lot of leagues. Now, for leagues where people are paying a little more attention, I'm trying to use the word sharper, but sharper. I agree with this strategy that Kyle and Daigle have laid out here. the upside is just tremendous in this offense. The rushing upside, forget he could even struggle as a passer and produce, weekly numbers that will give you an advantage against almost everyone you play in fantasy. So I'm on board with that, but I do have this terrible feeling that Kyle Shanahan is fully committed to keeping him on the bench as long as possible.
What I really think is going on, this is what I've convinced myself of my own take. That's how you know it's a good take. That's something you're already thinking, and then you convince yourself as you're going. Is that I think he truly does not know if Trey Lance will be starting week 1. Like he's actually not going to force the issue, but I think he's going to set a high but not impossible bar for Trey Lance in training camp. It's kind of what it sounds like to me. And if he hits that high bar, like truly, like not handed to him, like he's going to have to really do some things they think he might not be ready for. Then if he does those, he will get the week 1 call. But I have become convinced that, they are serious, like where this is not going to be one of those situations where it's just handed to the rookie. And we do have to truly entertain the possibility that he will not be starting week 1. The NBC Sports Edge 2021 Draft Guide is live and now features Randall Cobb in the top 100, Jacoby Myers in the top 80. Saquon Barkley has moved ahead of Ezekiel Elliott. We have several new mock drafts going up this week, including a super flex and a salary cap mock. The draft guide is packed with hundreds of player profiles, rankings for every format, projections, tiers, mock drafts, custom scoring, ADP trend report, and so much more. Use promo code SAVE10 to get 10% off. That is SAVE10 for 10% off.
All of that updated as well.
Odell Beckham has avoided the PUP list. A lot of PUP action this week, but did not include Odell Beckham. Maybe a slight surprise that maybe he could have been eased back in. He was never in any danger of missing week 1, but a really good sign that he is hitting the ground running. His ADP is currently like the wide receiver 28 to 30 range. Kyle, we'll go to you. I called John a Cowboys fan earlier. I'm going to call you a Browns fan, even though I know for sure you're not a Browns fan. Do we have any, as sharps, quote unquote, do we have any Odell Beckham shares this summer, or have we moved on?
Nah, I'm a big Browns fan. I love Bernie Kosar, Jim Brown, the rest of the gang. I got jerseys of them sitting.
The guys you were too young to ever watch.
Exactly. I love those guys. They're my favorites, some would say. No, I think this offense has a chance. I mean, it has a chance. It should, in some sense, look a lot like we saw from Minnesota last year, where sure, they're not going to lead the league in pass attempts. Probably not going to be in the top half in pass attempts, but they have such a strong possibility of being one of the more efficient passing attacks while having one of the most condensed passing attacks, simply because when you look like Rashard Higgins is fine, Donovan Peoples-Jones is probably maybe less than fine, but they have one elite receiver, at one point elite receiver, and one good slot receiver, and not much else behind them. But then they have a really strong offensive mind in Stefanski. They have a quarterback who, I don't think Baker Mayfield is great, but no one thinks Kirk Cousins is great either. And he was one of the league leaders in touchdown rate and pass attempt or yards per pass attempt last year. They run a style of offense that is specifically designed to not pass a lot and be really good when they pass. And they have a receiver in Odell Beckham, who at one point was probably the best receiver in the league. If not, he was at least top 3. Is he still that guy? Probably not. He's probably not at the peak he was when he was 24 years old. But does he have, 80% of that potential? I think so. So I think the upside here is probably going a little understated because we think of the Browns as this 1950s style team. And sure, they kind of, at least in terms of their pass run split, are like that. But they do a lot of, they do play action a lot, and they do it well. They'll use pre-snap motion. They are the smartest 1950s style team we may see in the league. And they have a quarterback who I think is just as good as a guy like Kirk Cousins, who fueled 2 wide receiver ones last year. And I think the split could be more in favor of Beckham versus Landry than it would have been last year with Thielen versus Justin Jefferson. So is it possible that he goes out? He's not even a shade of his former self, and the Browns run a lot, and it's not great. Sure, I think that's in the cards, but I do think there's an upside in the cards that doesn't seem to be baked in. So yeah, I'm over the field at least or at least I have more than 1 out of 12 in all of my best balls and in my season-long redraft of Odell Beckham.
If you remove the 3 weather games the Browns played mid-year, Baker Mayfield averaged 32 attempts per game. That's not a reason to shy away from Beckham. It just tells us, like Kyle said, they're going to have to rely on efficiency. But that's okay. We don't mind that with uber talented players like Beckham, who recall in his full 6 games with Baker Mayfield last year did average team highs in target share, 25%, air yards, red zone targets, and end zone looks. Like all the metrics we chase and opportunity for receivers are what Beckham had, despite averaging just 14.5 fantasy points per game. So even in banking on efficiency, I'm just fine with that because Beckham's ADP is depressed since everyone no longer believes he can do it at such a young age as well. So I'm fine taking the discount and treating him as a wide receiver 4 on your roster because that's what people are allowing right now in summer drafts.
Well, John, you took all my stats.
I'm sorry.
I don't really have much stat. But yeah, I was like, oh, just come to me. I got the air yards. I got the target share. We're good. No.
Denny, first thing real quick, if you're no longer a member of the staff, which you aren't, you don't get the stats.
Oh.
Right. So Daggle's an actual employer. He gets the stats.
You could talk about his onside kick return for a rushing touchdown. There you go.
You got to factor that in. You have to. Yeah. Where he's going in drafts, I just always find other wide receivers more appealing. I don't know.
Like who? Name a few names.
Yeah.
If you like wide receivers so much, why don't you name a few of them?
Okay, curious. I'm looking at ADP right now.
Then he knows players. I got so many players I like more than Odell Beckham.
That's
you wouldn't
right.
even believe it.
Yeah, so many. T. Higgins. I know that a few weeks ago I was chastised for ranking Chase Claypool far too low, and you were right. You guys were right. I was wrong. I like Claypool way more than Beckham. Is that even controversial? I don't know. I would take him over Kenny Golladay because I just feel like the Giants. I know the Giants are going to be a dumpster fire on offense. So I guess I'm taking Beckham over Golladay, but I'm not like intrigued by his ADP. Although Kyle's right, John's right. It is an efficient passing game. It really was last year, and I think there is some appeal to that. Hopefully there will be more weeks where the Browns can't just take the air out of the ball, and keep it on the ground with Chubb and Hunt. That would be advantageous to Beckham, but I'm not on fire for OBJ.
Are you on fire for Damian Harris, CD Carter? That is called the transition.
Oh yeah.
As the final player in the news segment, we were talking about a day where even Bill Belichick has got Damian Harris fever. He's admitting he has a great opportunity to be the lead back. He said Sony Michel is canceled. He might not have actually said that. Was more like facial. I was reading body language from Bill Belichick when he said Sony Michel is canceled because those words never actually left his mouth. But yeah, we got Bill Belichick actually admitting Damian Harris has an opportunity to be the lead back. Daigle, Kyle, is the ADP going to get too out of whack for Damian Harris? Because it's already kind of high just on faith alone. And now starting to get some actual concrete reports. Are we going to be overly investing in someone who despite having some pass catching chops, could still just be a strict 2-down back? Or is it safe to kind of go all in on Damian Harris and that low end RB2 flex range?
He definitely has more upside than the low end RB2 range. I don't know if I'd be flexing on him since he may still end up being touchdown dependent with Sony Michel last year, who we don't know about his roster status, but we do know his chances have increased since Ramondre Stevenson got put on the non-football injury list with no return time or timeline given to us at all. And the 3 games they played together, Harris did outcarry Michel 41-17. The issue is that he only averaged, Harris did, 4.2 routes run per game, just a complete zero and dud in the passing game, because that's what went to James White, who's still around. And so that's what could lead to Harris being touchdown dependent. Having said that, it's a massive touchdown ceiling. Genuinely, if it's Mac Jones under center and Cam Newton is not involved inside the 5, which I still think there's a terrific chance he could be, which is the issue for me in drafting Harris. And no joke, it's not hyperbole. Harris has 20 touchdown upside. Because who else is pounding the rock in for an efficient offense with Mac Jones, who's just going to grind their way to the goal line and then use their one big back? Nobody else. And so, again, it could be just because he's touchdown dependent, though, because if you do get the 20 carries for 80 yards, which is also an outlook, that's just a dud. That's why you flex wide receivers. Right, Jenny?
That is right, actually. Well said. But, yes, Harris will be a 0 in the passing game, but he's going to be drafted.
I don't know if he'll be a full 0, by the way. He's not quite Sony Michel.
I'd bet on him being a 0.
He's a 0. He's an absolute 0.
It's just the Patriots. Game. What if they haven't done it for 20 years? Why would they suddenly care about this guy? I think he actually could be good in the passing game, but that's like saying Derrick Henry could be good. It just doesn't matter because we're never going to know.
Yeah, he's not. he's being drafted, and he's going to continue to be drafted as if he's going to catch 0 passes this year. And that's, as someone who is interested in running backs later on in the draft, I'm okay with that. He's going around James Robinson, Zach Moss, Leonard Fournette. I like him way better.
That's ridiculous. It's absurd.
I will contend he's going at the top of that tier of guys because the next guys ahead of him, underdog ADP, are Chase Edmonds, Trey Sermon, Kareem Hunt. I would take all those guys over him. I think he'll play a similar role. He'll probably get more carries than Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon's offense is way more efficient. Chase Edmonds going ahead of him. Like I'm even on the James Conner as a value guy, and I think Chase Edmonds is like clearly head and shoulders above Damian Harris. Like I'm not the biggest Chase Edmonds truther. I'm still above. Like it's like a tier break for me, right? He falls at the top of the tier. And so Daigle, I guess maybe sell me on the Patriots offense because I just don't see them being wildly efficient. Like I think under Cam Newton, they're slow. He scores a lot of touchdowns. Under Mac Jones, I just wasn't particularly high on him as a prospect. And generally the guys who go like beyond top 5 as quarterbacks just aren't like wildly successful as rookies. Like I have some optimism for Trevor Lawrence. I don't find myself having that same type of optimism for the Mac Jones led Patriots. And they could still be a good, successful winning team. I'm not excited for them getting to the goal line, Lux. I don't know if it happens.
Yeah, I was just saying it's interesting that Daigle thinks they're going to score 20 total touchdowns as an offense. So come on, lay it on us here, Daigle.
Well, no, I'm just saying much easier schedule, a higher ceiling for their running game if Cam Newton's removed from it, because I do think Mac Jones can win from week 1 and take that job over, and it'd just be a totally different offense. Like the fact that Cam Newton still 50% of his production in fantasy came from rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. He led the team with carries inside the 5 and 10 as well. So it's just adding that to what would be Damian Harris's role. If Sony Michel's around and splitting carries, then we have a major problem. But like, of course, Damian Harris has major touchdown upside. I'm not saying that he's going to get there. I'm just saying, of course, he has it.
I have an admission to make real quick, or in my head, I was conflating Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson talking points. I was like, wow, this guy's not a total 0 in the passing game. God. Damian's not a total 0, but I was actually thinking of Ramondre Stevenson, who is apparently canceled now.
Well, along with him, you've been canceled. So
yeah, I've been canceled for sure. Damian Harris, I think, caught 20 passes like 1 year at Alabama, but still. He's close to a 0 in the passing game. I have to concede that point. We're just about at the end here, but we've got a quick hit segment. Now we want John Daigle to take us around the world on the training camp quick hits that we didn't quite touch on during the main segment of the show. Because it was a very busy week. Go check out the NBC Sports Edge player news page. A lot of great stuff this week. But John, take us around the world real quick as we near the end of the show.
Do we want to close with the Jets offense and then do quick hits right now?
We're folding the Jets offense into the quick hits.
They're part of the world.
Then he's not going to be happy. Okay.
We're folding them into the quick hits.
Well, actually, it just confirms our prize from OTAs. Everyone says OTAs don't matter. And then pretty much everything we're hearing now at training camp happened already in OTAs, which is why all of our rankings have been adjusted this correctly for a month and a half now outside of developing news. Denzel Mims and Chris Herndon, for instance, are running exclusively with the second team in favor of Keelan Cole and Tyler Kroft. Whatever you think of that, it doesn't matter because it happened in the spring. Like we've already adjusted for that. Michael Carter is working as the 1, but so is Tevin Coleman. Like they're working together. I think it's kind of overblown how everyone's describing like the Jets having a singular running back that they're going to use right now. Emmanuel Sanders, who Denny loves to have in the queue, is in fact working as the second wideout, even though we know the Bills are still going to rotate their receivers heavily. It's just clear that Gabriel Davis will again have to make do on limited reps, which he's more than capable of. He proved last year. So that's no big deal, but just get ready because Sanders is the second wide receiver. Lamar Jackson won't return to practice on the COVID list. He's out 10 days. And that tells us, like whether he wanted us to know or not, that tells us he's not vaccinated, since the protocols from the CBA this year are that you can return to camp a la Justin Jackson if you have 2 negative tests within 24 hours apart, but you have to be out 10 days if you are not vaccinated. So it's pretty much making the case right now for that. But he should be healthy, no big deal. The Texans and the league and Deshaun Watson himself, no one is taking accountability for anything of the ongoing cases against him, and yet he's still allowed on the field to play scout team safety and defensive end. Like no one has a clue what's going on here. I would just imagine that he is very much done with the Texans for good and won't play a snap there. Curtis Samuel, groin injury, dealing with the spring on PUP now. Meanwhile, Adam Humphries has reportedly been Ryan Fitzpatrick's favorite target through the first week of camp.
I'd expect this from Denny, John.
Well, I mean, remember, they do have a rapport from 2018 together. Like Adam Humphries was an 800-yard receiver. Like he actually has like high floor upside in redraft leagues.
It's the worst news.
He could be
ever.
this year's Steven Sims, is what many are saying.
Kelvin Harmon, folks, is coming home to Adam Humphries.
Oh my God.
I don't know if this is affecting the way anyone is treating their outlooks, but no Dolphins receiver is healthy. Devontae Parker and Preston Williams opened the camp on PUP. Parker, I believe, is an undisclosed injury. Like, they didn't actually tell us what it was. Brian Flores is good at hiding that.
A lot of times, by the way, I hate to cut you off, John, that's like failing like the wind sprint test or whatever.
Oh, conditioning?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. And like, again, this is why there's just quick hits. It probably doesn't deserve our full attention, but we're just mentioning them. People can rewind this and jot it down if you're paying attention at home. And then also, Will Fuller did show up on Wednesday, but then left and got injured, and he didn't return on Thursday.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so now he's out with an undisclosed injury as well. They're using Albert Wilson, who opted out last year, along with Jalen Waddle in 2 wide sets with Tua. Jalen Hurd is healthy, but for how long? Pat, is this affecting your rankings? Like, as a last round receiver you're taking?
Yeah, I'll be frank about this. I have 28 players on my dynasty team. I have to cut down to 24 by Friday. I've had Jalen Hurd since he entered the league. Never played it down for my team. Without getting into who the other options are, would you give Jalen Hurd one more opportunity on my dynasty team? Or is it time to just finally cut?
Who else would you cut him for? Like,
we need to know, because I have bad
ceiling,
teams.
Right?
Yeah, I have bad teams.
First off, one of them who I irrationally want to keep is Kenny Uboa, the undrafted free agent tight end on the Jets.
I know who it is.
I need to just cut Kenny Uboa. I've got a lot of I got Marquez Callaway, who's uncuttable now. I've got Jalen Guyton, who's 500 or 600 yards this year. I honestly don't really want to cut him. I don't want to cut Larry Roundtree. This team is stacked, folks.
You cannot keep an undrafted tight end over.
That's the easy one. I wouldn't even keep Jalen Guyton, like the GOAT wins winner. Like, he was on for every snap last year and never got a target. Like, if you cannot draw targets like that, like with so many opportunities, it's not happening. Whereas Hurd, maybe something happens. Maybe he's a web back.
Yeah, maybe the guy who hasn't played in 2 years and is a 6'4" big slot receiver is suddenly going to go nuts for my team.
For whatever it's worth, Jalen Hurd is the team's third receiver. All beat reporters are saying, as long as he can stay healthy. If not, for whatever it's worth, again, in the spring, Jawan Jennings is working the third receiver. But we know those guys, whoever it is probably not going to have value unless you're Hurd, because you have that kind of upside that we have yet to see. And then finally, this is probably a note just for Denny. Kenyon Drake awkwardly put on the non-football injury list. But more importantly, Theo Riddick and Jalen Richard also went on the COVID list, and Raiders beat reporters showed up on Thursday morning to practice, and there were just 2 guys there with numbers 39 and number 7 just being running backs, and they didn't have names. No one knew who they were. They just saw them practicing, and like the roster didn't have a single note on them. So that's what's going on in Raiders field.
Did we ever find out who they were? Were they not Trey Ragas and Garrett Groshek?
Why are you saying those names? How do you know anything about this situation?
I blurred Rashard Riddick.
He knows a guy.
I blurred Rashard Riddick and I blurred Drake, and I had to dig to find these guys out. I don't know if that's who they actually were. I know that's who their UDFA signings this year were. So
that probably is it then. But why wouldn't they have their names on their back?
That's why I'm not positive. That's why I'm not positive the names I said are actually those guys. Why would you give them those numbers? I agree. Or why don't have the names?
It is the best mystery of training camp. That's all I know.
And I have those guys everywhere.
And you know what you just love is to have like a first round running back and the highest paid backup running back in the league. Mm-hmm. And then opening days in training camp, you have 2 running backs who don't even have names in their jerseys.
Signed off the street.
It's a well-oiled machine they got going on Las Vegas. That does it for today's show. What do we have up on the site? We've just finished our team preview series article on all 32 teams. We've talked about the draft guide. Do we have anything else going up this week, guys?
I have my Michael Thomas piece from this week. I'm also going to write up a Superflex mock that's going on later this afternoon. So look out for that in the draft guide.
And then GM rankings from last week, by the way, too.
GM rankings, and like you said, if you're just getting back into the groove of things, our fantasy previews just finished publishing this week. They're all available at their own tab at NBCSportsEdge.com.
That does it for today's show. I am Patrick Daugherty for Denny Carter, John Daigle, Kyle Dvorchak. We'll see you on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday next week.
Ever feel like you're in a battle with your bones and joints? Zadie suffered foot pain that hurt her game. Linda had ankle pain that tripped her up. They turned to Panorama Orthopedics and Spine Center, where our specialists customize care to include prevention, pain management, physical therapy, and surgery. At Panorama, we're on Team Zadie, Team Linda, and Team U. 7 locations including Westminster, DTC, and Centennial. Online scheduling available. Feel better, do more.